Sure. So I'm going to start out and say that Belize is not cheap. And I know the word cheap is absolutely relative to everyone, and someone's version of cheap is different than someone else's. But I think sometimes people come down here because Belize is in Central America, and they think, oh, it's a developing country, so I can get that beachfront bungalow for $50,000. And that was maybe 30 years ago. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist today. Now, I do think if you're buying something and owning something today versus 10 years from now, you're going to be like, oh, I'm really, really glad that I did that.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Brighton. I'm a licensed mortgage broker, money coach, and also the author of the book, Master Your Mortgage, What the Bank Won't Tell You About Buying the Right Home. So before I get you guys into the interview, I just kind of want to give you guys a little bit of context here. So you will hear my audio is a little bit slightly lower, and that's because this was my first time doing an in-person interview. This interview wasn't actually originally designed to be on YouTube. It was designed to be in my podcast, Wealth Marathon Podcast. So how this came about is I was in Belize. We had already purchased the land in Belize, and we're going to go see it for the first time. So we met up with Rachel, which is the realtor we work with. More specifically, Gina was the realtor we were working with, but Rachel is the owner of the realty or the real estate company there. So I told her, hey, do you want to do an interview to sort of help other people, learn how the process is to buying in Belize? And she said, yeah, for sure. So it was all great until I came back home and I realized my audio was a little bit lower. And of course, there were some technical issues. So I have increased my audio a little bit to help you guys out. I've also added subtitles to this one so you can hear everything clearly. And then I think it's fine when you're watching it. At least I thought it was fine. So I hope you guys find it to be fine. But anyhow, lots of good information that Rachel shares here and Gina. So if you're someone who's interested in buying a property in Belize, this is really good, useful resources to have people who are going to help you through the process, sort of explain some of the things you need to keep in mind when it comes to buying real estate in Belize. But anyhow, I'm going to get you guys now to the interview. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wealth Marathon Podcast. My name is Bryson Garcia. I'm your host, and today I have a special episode with you guys because we're live actually in Belize today, San Pedro to be more specific. And I've got Gina and Rachel here from Luna Realty. Thanks, guys, for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. This is an exciting episode.
Yeah, so we just came in here. We've been here now for 5 days in San Pedro, and I actually work with Luna Realty. Gina actually helped us secure our first lot here. So I thought it was a great opportunity to kind of talk to the professionals, let them know, like, hey, what do you think about this market? For those of you who may be interested in buying land in Belize here. So before we get into it, I guess let me just give you guys the chance to get to know Rachel here and Gina here. So do you guys just mind introducing yourself a little bit? We'll start with Rachel.
Sure. Yeah. So as Brighton mentioned, my name is Rachel Jensen. I'm the broker owner of Luna Realty Belize here in San Pedro, as Brighton mentioned. And I'm originally from New York. I'm from the States and made my way down here to Latin America in 2012. I started working with a real estate developer, and I was actually stationed in Managua, Nicaragua. And after about 3 or 4 months of working with the company, the development company, they sent me over here to Ambergris Caye to visit another property that they were just starting to work on. And I came here, I was here for about 2 weeks, and I just loved it. And then I found myself coming back about every month and a half for a week or two. And then I realized, like, I don't have to stay in Managua, Nicaragua. I can stay here in Belize. I'm coming back and forth all the time. I could do a lot of my job anyway from the computer. And so I talked to my then boss about it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we actually needed somebody out in Belize, but I thought you really liked Nicaragua, so we didn't ask you." So I ended up coming out here and basing myself in Belize. I went through the whole real estate process, purchased a condo, and then from there just learned more and more about the market as I spent more time here and was living here and based here at that point. So I was with the development company for 10 years, left a few years ago and started the real estate company because I saw that there were so many more opportunities outside of the development. We still have great relations with that company and still do sales and work with them for people who are looking for that sort of product, but found that there's just a really great market here to be able to educate people and serve them with what it is that they're looking for. So this is home. This is going to be home until forever, probably.
Not a bad home.
Yeah, I really enjoy it here, and it's the people at the end of the day that's kept me personally. And so we're really great to have it's really great to have a really neat network here, just a really friendly group of people, and that's ultimately why we've stayed.
Awesome, man. Yourself?
Yeah, I don't have an extensive bio like Rachel, but
You have a good one.
but my name is Gian Rivero. I was born and raised here on the island, so I've lived all my life here on the island. My mother was born and raised here. My grandfather was born and raised here. So I come from a long line of island people, of islanders here on the island.
An island boy.
An island boy. But yeah, I've called San Pedro and Brigisky my home all my life, and I started in the tourism industry. So I managed my uncle's dive shop at first. Did that for a good time, and it was great. I mean, it's nothing better than having an office by the sea, right? So
Or in the sea.
or in the sea, or in the sea. And so I did a lot of diving. I did a lot of the management, the back end of it. And then when everything shut down for 2020, we didn't have much tourism around. And so at that time, Rachel was out in the US, and she's like, well, we needed someone to take care of the condo. We stayed. And at that time, I was big on playing Fortnite games, right? And I'm a gamer, yeah. And so my partner Yaka, she got tired of me playing games, and so she had reached out to Rachel and say, "Hey, do you have a position open?" And then I got a WhatsApp message saying, "Welcome to the team." And I'm like, "Yaka, what did you do?"
It's true. It's true. Yaka volunteered you.
Yaka volunteered me, and so I started off as database assistant with Yaka, and then eventually I graduated to sales and did sales with the same development company that Rachel was in. I did that for a couple of time, and then when everything in tourism started coming back, then I did the management of a resort up north. And at that same time, Rachel was also opening the real estate brokerage here, and so eventually just transitioned and became a part of the team here at Luna Realty.
Oh, awesome. So that's great introduction. So lots of experience, and I will say, like working with Eugene, one of the things that I just love is that he's local, right? So that was really big on me because, like you can see, he lives. So it's really good when you're buying real estate anywhere. If you can have someone who knows the market, not just knows the market, but it's actually there because you get different perspectives. So that was one of the things I really loved working with you on is I knew that you were local, so you get like a local perspective. So
Yes.
it's great to like work with you. Okay, so Rachel, you started this Luna Realty here. So I'm just one of the things we try to do with the podcast is try to understand business owners a little bit.
Yeah.
What was sort of your inspiration? Why did you want to set up shop in Belize of all places, right?
Sure. So Belize, let me say, it's really just become home. And so when I was working with the real estate developer, I was with them for about a decade, and this was home. I was traveling actually quite a bit with the company because they had properties all throughout the region. But every time I came home, home, right? Home was here in Belize. This is where I had my condo. This is where the property was. And this is where my friends were. So it was really not an option, or I didn't really consider leaving Belize when I left the real estate development company because this is what I knew, right? And then at the end of the day, when I realized that there were so many great opportunities here and there was just so much that I wanted to be able to share with people about real estate in Belize, because for me, an educated buyer is the best buyer, right? And so when you're doing your homework and you're learning about real estate here in Belize, when you see opportunities, it just makes it a little bit easier to jump on it if you know what you're getting into, right? So it was a no-brainer for me to stay here in Belize, but then specifically on Ambergris Key, it's just where there's a tremendous amount of tourism right now. This island produces about 70% of the tourism revenue for the entire country of Belize, right? Like Belize is about the size, and this is a U.S. reference, but about the size of Massachusetts, right? And so population-wise, about 400,000, and this island is about 26 miles long, 1 mile wide at its widest point. Is the biggest draw for tourists and visitors in the entire country because of the reef, right? So I've dabbled in a little bit of real estate on the mainland, and I think we'll actually get over there probably in 2024 here, maybe early 2025. But this is where you really want to be if you're looking for property here in Belize for an investment or land banking appreciation. It's happening here.
That was one of Rachel, good thing you brought that because that was one of the things when I was looking at real estate, I saw that this kind of had the most concentration in terms of tourism and just people living here. So that was the reason why I picked here because actually our first time to Belize was to Placencia. But then when I was researching a little bit more, it seemed like there was more of a population here. And that's really important when it comes to real estate, right? Having that demand in place. So yeah, that's really good thing that you said about that. Now, I guess I want to shift a little to you, Jan. Like, what makes San Pedro specifically like a really great area to just from a local's perspective? What do you love about San Pedro?
Yeah, well, from a local perspective, me personally, I'm an avid diver, so I enjoy going down to the reef, enjoy going diving, swimming. It's nice having clear days, calm days, and being out. one of the main things too is you just know everybody. You know,
Right.
being from a local, being born and raised here, you know everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's not uncommon for example, for me to be able to go to someone's house and just be
Right.
welcome. They feed me. They say, "Hey, you know, you need to eat," and there's a whole plate of food. You know, and so I think it's that people, the people really
Yes.
that makes it here, and
Yeah.
us being from a tourism island too, we understand that we need
Yeah.
to be friendly, and it's not just because we have to, but it's
Right.
because we want to.
Right.
We want to ensure that everyone feels welcomed at home, because
Absolutely.
that's really what San Pedro is. We want everyone to feel welcome. We want everyone to have a home away from home. You know,
Right.
'cause regardless of whatever is happening here, it's different. It's nice.
And I will vouch for that because just again, this is our second trip here, and I will say like, yeah, like there's just this local feeling you feel when you come here, just hospitality you feel that you speak about. And I think that's really important because if you're making an investment, like yeah, there's an investment, but depending on what your plans are, you also what makes a place is the people, right? So
Yeah.
it's just been really everyone's been super friendly here, super like just inviting. So that makes it a lot easier when you make an investment from another part of the world that you know like the people here are actually looking out for you and genuinely are just friendly towards people coming in. So you're absolutely right. I feel that, right?
And I do want to add to that too is the safety element of it, right? Because it's a small town feel, it's a
Yes.
community element,
Yes.
it's safe, and we have a lot of tourists here. I mean, I'm going to go back to this. It's safe, right?
Yes.
And that's a really huge factor in it. And sometimes we get people reaching out and be like, I want to be in a gated community. And we're like, well, there's places that feel like gated communities, but do you need to have a physical gate? Because like there are no physical gates or fences or security guards,
Yeah.
because we just don't need that. You're not going to see all the burglar bars all over the windows.
Yeah.
It's just not the sort of environment that it is here.
That's a good point you bring up, Rachel, because I know like when we were planning our trip and just for Canadians out there, like we have the website from the government, they literally rate like Belize like high. So like our friends that we went the first time, like you went to Belize, like were you okay? And I came here, I was just like I didn't feel unsafe. I
Right.
went out at night. I think like anywhere where you travel, I would say like common sense goes a long way.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I'm from Vancouver. I probably wouldn't recommend you go to Vancouver and you're downtown east side because you probably feel completely unsafe. So in any part you travel to, any part in the world, yes, there are places that you probably should exercise a little more high, common sense. But yeah, walk around Belize, I don't feel a sense of like my life is in danger or
No.
anything like that. And the place we bought, it's not like a gated place or anything like that. So I feel totally comfortable. So you're right. I think people need to understand like it's a safe place.
Yep.
Having said that, though, common sense it still applies, right? So that's with any country, including Canada, right? So just be aware of that. But you're right, totally safe place. Okay, so Rachel, I want to ask you a little bit because a lot of times when people look to invest in a place, particularly when it's like a foreign place, they don't really know what's going on, and maybe they're thinking their market. So maybe I know this is really hard because we're on a podcast. Can you just give like a high level, like overview of just the market in terms like, is there certain areas like what do you see opportunities? Just very high level.
Sure. So I'm going to start out and say that Belize is not cheap. And I know the word cheap is absolutely relative to everyone, and someone's version of cheap is different than someone else's. But I think sometimes people come down here because Belize is in Central America, and they think, oh, it's a developing country, so I can get that beachfront bungalow for $50,000. And that was maybe 30 years ago. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist today. Now, I do think if you're buying something and owning something today versus 10 years from now, you're going to be like, oh, I'm really, really glad that I did that, right? But you look 10 years ago, things were more expensive today than was 10 years ago, and it's going to be the same going forward, right? And so with that being said, I do still believe that Belize is a really great market. It hasn't plateaued. There are some destinations around the world, like Cancun, for example, or Cabo, other parts of Mexico, where the real estate prices there maybe have plateaued because they've been so in front of tourism for the last 30-ish years, right? Here in Belize, we're still at the forefront of this general public coming down and visiting Belize, right? A lot of people are now just starting to hear about Belize, and maybe they've heard about it over the last couple of years. They had friends or family visit. A lot more direct flights have started over the last few years coming to Belize, which helps with the number of travelers coming and also just the general awareness of the country. And the country, because it's so small, it's been overshadowed by Mexico, right, for so long, or by Panama or by Costa Rica.
Right.
And so now it's really just starting to blossom and people are hearing about it. So with that being said, real estate prices here are, of course, going up. We're on an island, and just, of course, all around the world, but land is finite, especially coastal land or property that's close to the coast. Right. So you're going to find that properties that are on the water are more expensive. But if you're willing to go a couple rows back, a few rows back, you'll find that they really are still affordable here.
Right.
I would say for being a 3-minute walk or 2-minute walk to the water. But Belize is primarily a cash market because foreigners have a very difficult time. I mean, it's nearly impossible for a foreigner to get local bank financing, right? They don't know you from Adam, and so they're not going to loan to you. And so what happens a lot of time is people have to come in with cash or, and not physical bills, right? But like be able to put down 100% of their asking price.
Right.
Or they have to look for seller financing.
Yeah.
And seller financing is only available for about 20 to 25% of the properties that are on the market. And typically the terms are short, right? So you'll typically put 50% down, 50% down, and then you'll have a term of maybe 3 to 5 years and interest anywhere between 8 to 10%. And even when in North America, when interest rates were really low with COVID, like we never saw those really low interest rates from sellers here. They're like, no, we're sticking like 8 to 10%, right? So it's important for people to know when they're coming into this market that you really do need to have the cash for it, or you need to be able to look for seller financing because that will give you a little bit of leverage. But you're not going to be able to find that 10% down, 30-year term, right? 4% interest. It just doesn't exist here. And it doesn't have to because the market's done so well, right? And I know a lot of people, we just had a fellow in yesterday who was talking about, the upcoming recession. And, there's always a recession looming, it seems. But, here from 2008 to 2012, we really didn't see much change in the real estate market because a lot of people owned properties outright, right? And the property taxes here are so minimal. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm going to say that I'm going to guess the property taxes for your lot are no more than $100 US per year, right? And that's average for a 2-bedroom condo. Average price is about 500 US per year. Sorry, I don't know the Canadian equivalent right now, right? But prices here are in US. Yeah, prices here are in real estate prices are in US dollars, so you tend to hear it in US dollars. So I think that it's really affordable for people to hold property, right? So let's say, Brighton, you're not intending to build on the lot for 10 years and something happens and, you realize you have to sell it in 10 years instead of build your dream property. Well, you didn't have that many carrying costs.
Totally.
And you'll be able to sell it for X percent higher. Right. So I think that there's just a really strong market here right now. And I think that this country's just really starting to hit the public wave when it comes to tourism. And as more and more people come, as it gets easier to come maybe from Europe, right? Like think about once a flight from Britain comes, it's going to be a totally different market here, an increased market. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Rachel, because I think for those of you, particularly Canadians, if you're looking to invest here, like you need to understand, like you need to have the cash ready. So this is not going to be back home where you can go to the bank, get the more financing terms. So if you're looking to make that investment, you really need to think about like what kind of cash. And to your point, you're right, even because I also had to adjust because when we think cheap, like you said, these are the Central America, we have this image, because we're, North America, we're thinking, it's going to be like dirt cheap. And you will see videos out there of like, $30,000 lots or whatever. But I was telling people like, the price reflects the property too.
Yes.
Be mindful of that, right? So I think you really need to, like Rachel was saying, is when you come into this market, really understand you need to really get that financing piece ready and also adjust when you think about like what's really cheap, because cheap might not be like what you're thinking about, like, the videos you may see out there for $20,000. Sure, but it may be nothing. It may not be
no road access.
These are really great things that you want to check in, before you actually make that investment. The big thing is, mostly a cash base, in terms of purchase. And that's also important because when you're looking to buy, keep that in mind, right? Because as investors or anyone that's buying real estate, you want incentives, right? You want to make sure they're motivated. So just keep in mind, if people are buying things cash, unless something's really happening back home, they can hold on longer. So the deals may not be quite as, exciting in terms of like them getting out because they don't need to. It's paid off in cash, right? So that's a really good important point that you bring up, Rachel. Okay, so I want to transition now to your GM because I think one of the things that when I was doing the deal with you is communication. we did this over WhatsApp because I no, it's really important, right? Because I just want to speak to you. You're the you're the one who dealt with. Can you maybe just talk about how you communicate to clients overseas, and maybe just reinforce people so they don't think it's like weird because literally we video and talk over WhatsApp. So like yeah, maybe just talk about like how do you communicate to clients and what's a common way of in terms of how people communicate back and forth.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, for starters, it all starts with an email. And what we really try to do and try to get people on is on a Zoom call, because then, some people says, well, anybody can email and I don't know if it's real. You don't know if the person I'm talking to is a real person, if he actually says who he is.
Yeah.
And so I think getting on a call where you can see me and I can see you and we can have that conversation back and forth is very important.
Right.
Because then you can see that I am a real person.
Yes.
I am someone that's actually living in Belize, working in Belize, and the property is real. And so I think being able to have that face to face, whether it's over Zoom or over a WhatsApp video call, is quite important. And then also being timely on the WhatsApp, being available is also very important. I think to a lot of people, if they have any questions, you'd be able to WhatsApp easier. Having your personal number is also something that gives a little bit more comfort. Saying if anything happens, then I have his personal number, I can give him a ring at any time of the day. I may not answer at 12 o'clock at night, but I mean the message is there, and I'll be able to see it.
Yeah, why not, Gian?
Why not?
Well, and to your point too, a lot of times we have local phone numbers here, right? So our country code that we have is plus 501.
Yes.
And so to call from a Belize number to a Canadian number, and for you to call a Belizean number, there's probably a cost associated with it. So WhatsApp is great because you do it over Wi-Fi or your data, right? And it's essentially free as long as you have Wi-Fi or data, and then from there you're able to communicate a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, so if you're doing the WhatsApp thing, it's weird at first, but like, because if you're coming from Canada, you're like you said, you're used to just dealing with your agent, picking up the phone, you can go see him in person.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, I think I told you, like, the time I realized the deal was done was he did a video walking to the beach, and I was like, okay, over WhatsApp. And that was when I was like, okay, we're going to do it, right? And it can feel overwhelming because, we're just used to doing more due diligence. And I was telling them, like, I'm a mortgage broker, right? So, like, my brain is just like all the signals. I'm like, this is weird. This is what you see in videos. But, like I said, they're real. So, if you're working with downline, just know that it's a little bit uncomfortable. Like you said, just get to know them, do the video, find a format that works for you. And then just know that, okay, if you could do it over WhatsApp, it does save money because if you call in, it's very expensive. So, the WhatsApp just makes sense. And again, you'll be able to meet him whichever way you feel comfortable doing it. But it's not weird if you get the deal done over WhatsApp. All right, Rachel. So you've talked a lot about giving us some overview on the market. I just want to know, like, when someone's coming in, what are sort of like, what do you see like the big mistakes? Maybe just one or two that you can to let people know, like, these are some of the mistakes that people make when they're trying to make an investment here.
Yes. So, I end up getting a lot of people calling me after they've worked with somebody else, right? And a lot of people who are like, this is what happened. Is this right? Like something feels a little off, and they'll explain the situation to me. One of the biggest ones that I've received from people is that they haven't seen the lot, right? So like at least you guys did a WhatsApp video, right? So you're able to see it. So some folks have never seen the property even through that format before.
Wow.
And so I had one lady who called me a couple weeks ago, and she found out that the property that she purchased was landlocked. There's no road access, and it was totally an oversight from the lands department because technically all lands here are supposed to have an easement of some sort, whether it's a road access or access by water, right? So it was just a total oversight of this property. Now, however, her real estate agent really should have mentioned something, right? To me, that's unethical that a real estate agent didn't mention. She's like, here, buy this property, buy this property, buy this property. However, not all real estate agents are going to be saying that because I'm going to guess they want the sale. So what I would make sure that you're asking is there access? How do I access this property? Is there a road that is currently in, right? Is there road access, and are there utilities? Because there are a lot of properties, like you mentioned, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 that don't have any utility hookups to it. So people have to buy solar and then do off-grid water. And actually, a lot of us here have off-grid water, and we have wells or water catchment or cisterns because the public water is a little dicey at times. So it's just not a great flow, I'll tell you that. So a lot of us do actually have water that's an off-grid system. However, if you're not familiar with solar, I was just talking to a builder up at Secret Beach, and he was saying for an average two-bedroom home, two 2 bed, 2 bath, 800 square feet. The average cost of a solar system is going to be about $26,000 to $30,000 US. And that's not typically something that we're budgeting in if we're thinking about building costs, right? So knowing if your property has road access and or just access generally and how to access it, and then also is your property connected to the grid.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing that I'm going to mention is making sure if you're buying a property that's already existing, make sure you're getting an inspection. And if you're buying land like you did, Brighton, get a survey, right? Because you want to be able to see that there's nothing encroaching on your property. It's super important to be able to do that. And then, of course, from the inspection, this is probably standard in Canada, right? Is you're just making sure that you're doing that. I had a client the other day ask me about mold tests and RAN tests and lead tests. We don't do that here. It's really just over the last 5 years that inspections have started. So we're excited about that. But it's important for buyers to know exactly what they're getting into.
That's a good point that you bring up because it goes back to what you said earlier about like our cost mentality, right? So like if you're buying something and you're talking 25, I'm like, whoa, that expensive. I think for those of us that are buying, it's just if you're going to be building something, like putting a sunroof, you may think, oh, well, it's a Central American country, it's going to be like $5,000. Like, no, like remember everything here, the real estate price is all in US dollars, right? So for us Canadians, it's even a little bit more, right? So I think that's a really important point that you bring up. So I hope you guys are enjoying the interview so far. Now, some of you may at the end of this want more information in terms of like how to actually go through the process of buying a property in Belize. So I just want to let you know that I did create a course for this specifically because a lot of families and friends were asking us, how do we go about buying this? So you can check out the course here at the link in this video. And it's a course that basically details everything, the experience I went through, and some of the things that I think are really important for you to keep in mind when it comes to buying property in Belize. I think one of the really, easy thing to do in Belize or any place that's really hot is that it's very easy to buy a property in a place like Belize, but it's much harder for you to understand what is your exit position. So me being in real estate and having that real estate background, I give this course a little bit more context because I think there's the stuff you see all online on YouTube, like go buy a property in Belize and everything's gonna be fine. And considering the election just happened in the US, I imagine a lot of your audience here, US people are thinking about moving out of the United States. Before you do that, the best money you can spend is actually learn a little bit about how this process works. So my course is designed for that. I don't have any ties to, Belize in terms like work or anything like that. This is really my experience and then putting my real estate hat in terms of investor's hat and figuring out what's the best way to go about buying a property in Belize. So check out that course. Again, the link is in the description where you can actually learn how to buy property in Belize as a foreigner. So I think it's with this video and also taking that course, you'll be well prepared to understand, not to fall into those traps that you might fall into when it comes to buying property in Belize. So again, check out the link in the course in the description for how to access that course. But one thing since we're on there and you talked about the agents, can you talk about like how it works here in terms of becoming a real estate agent?
Yes.
Because I think that's important for reaching out to someone. What is sort of the process or the steps here in Belize?
So really great question. So I sit on the board for our real estate association here, and this is something over the last few years that we've really been working towards. A new real estate bill is licensing, because right now there is no licensing. Now, technically, to be a real estate agent here, you have to be licensed to work, be able to work, right? So you're able to work if you have a work permit, if you're a resident, or if you're a citizen. If you're a vacationer, if you're a snowbird, you are not licensed to work here, so technically you can't become an agent. With that being said, there are no licensing classes, right? In North America, you have to go through rigorous courses and pass those tests in order to become an agent. Here, it's not like that. So when I recommend that people are looking at agents, one of the big things is their experience. How long have they been on the island or in the area where they're looking? If someone tells me that they've been living here for 6 months, I'm like, okay, well, how much, I hate to say, like, how much do you really know about the market? How can you tell me about how properties are doing well and how there's big appreciation here over the last decade if you haven't been here for it, right? That's why, Gian, you're great, because you're like, yeah, I remember we were talking about this. When a Yak in our office, she was saying, I remember when the houses in DFC, one of the local neighborhoods, was 80,000 Belize, 40,000 US. This was 2007, I think you said 2007, right? So now we're in 2023, and like you can easily get 135 for those houses. But someone who's been here for 6 months would have no idea, So I think that it's really important to find that, and then obviously you have to be able to have a relationship. Like you would have to be able to trust your agent, and it's like that in Canada too, right? You want to be working with somebody that you like.
Exactly. No,
so.
totally. I think the big thing that you just point out is just the idea that there's no process right now, right, for someone to become a licensed agent. That I would say like licensing is different than having someone who's knowledgeable, right? So
Yes.
you want both, right? And I think with your team, what I like is like we have someone local and you're here, and like that's a really good point because someone may come to you that just got into the market, got the license, and be like $135 is a great deal, but they don't know the historical
Right,
what
numbers
that
and
is.
data. Yep. Yep.
So it's really important to be mindful and like Rachel was saying, like do a little more investigation to find out what that person is. I remember I was interviewing some other people and yeah, like I think that one person I was wanting to work, but they were saying they were spending 6 months and I was just like, oh, like okay, 6 months, like how do you know what's really going on? So I was just, yeah. But your team, because you had someone local, I was like, okay, this person can see the trends. They've seen things change and they can tell me what isn't working.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
just keep in mind, it's not like back home in Canada we have like a process. And I guess one other thing we should talk because I think you did a video recently on MLS.
Yes, and you were the inspiration for the video there, Brighton.
Because one of the things when you're online, right, you're looking for this property, you go through the zoning, and sometimes you see a really great property. Can you explain why that isn't always around still? Like when you see something online?
So there's no central MLS here. Now that's something in that real estate bill that I mentioned that we are pushing to have is an MLS between all the brokers. Right now you have to go to each individual broker's website and you may or may not know the company, right? You know, we're fairly new in the real estate space here at Luna. So, you know, maybe we don't come up on the first or second page of Google or initially when we were starting. So people may not have heard about us, right? So if you don't know about us and you don't know about our listings, then there's no way that you're going to see our properties. So what a lot of people do, what a lot of agents do is they'll update their properties on Point to Homes and Realtor.com. However, that's not updated. So what they'll do is they'll put them up there. Even if the property sells, they'll just keep it up there because they'll just keep in the leads. Yeah, keep in the leads that are coming in, and then they'll be able to reach out and say, "Oh, sorry, that property sold, but like now that we have your email address and we can talk to you." Right, and you know it's a little deceiving, but at the same time, I understand it too, because if something comes available in that same building or something, then you know your realtor hopefully can tell you about it. But I will say, I'm going to go back to the real estate agent question for a minute because there is a difference between realtor and real estate agent. Right, realtor is somebody who is a paying member of the National Association of Realtors. So it's that international company of realtors. There's a code of ethics that you have to follow. A real estate agent is anyone who's selling real estate, but they may not necessarily be a realtor. So if they're not into that, if they're not paying into the National Association of Realtors, they're not a realtor, but they're still a real estate agent. Does that make sense?
No, maybe.
Yeah, let me take a step back.
Okay, let me use the Canadian example, then maybe you can model that and show us different. So like when we think of a real estate agent back home, it's someone who's gone through, like you said, course, and they're licensed to sell and help you buy real estate.
Yes.
So is that what you're saying as a real estate agent?
Yes, and that's still a real estate agent here, right? They don't necessarily have the licensing part, but they're still a real estate agent who's selling the property. Now, a realtor is somebody who's a paying member of the National Association of Realtors. That's that international group of real estate agents essentially who come together, and when you become a realtor, you complete this course on the code of ethics, right? And so the code of ethics is, how you treat your clients, how you treat, sales, like that whole thing. And so a lot of people have comfort if they know their real estate agent is a realtor because they've actually gone through a little bit more.
Oh, so it's like an additional layer.
Yes, exactly. And then there's continuing education courses through NAR and just a bunch of different resources that your agent can have if they're a realtor. Right. So here, even though we don't necessarily have the licensing with our real estate association, we are partnered up with the National Association of Realtors, NAR. And anybody who is a member of the association can pay and become what they call an IRM, International Realtor Member. And when you are an IRM, that means you've gone through the code of conduct training, the ethics, and you're getting a lot of those resources from NAR. So you're technically a realtor. You're part of the you're part of the real estate association. And you have a little bit more. There's a little bit more confidence, I would say, from
like
clients.
an extra layer for the consumer, just to know, hey, this person is gonna look more.
Exactly.
But there's nothing wrong with working with just a real estate agent.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Okay, it's just if you happen to have a realtor, they probably
Yep.
got this extra layer
Exactly.
of code of ethics or whatever.
Yep. Training and whatnot. Yep. Exactly.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense a little bit. It's just a little confusing.
Perfect. I know the terminology because we use them a lot interchangeably, right?
Yeah.
And I truly didn't know this until I was in the real estate space. Like I had no idea that there was a difference between realtor and real estate agent.
Okay.
But there's that slight difference.
Now, the other question, since we're on that,
Mhm.
maybe either one of you can touch. Can you just talk about the closing process here, how that is? Because when we did the deal, you then told me I had to find a closing agent. So, like, can you maybe talk after you've got the deal, kind of what's the step that comes next in terms of like going to lawyer and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So initially, what it'll start off is with an offer to purchase, and so that's where we'll have the price that you're offering or
Right.
any contingencies. For example, doing the survey or the building inspection, depending on the property that you're purchasing, is really what we'll have as a set of rules that needs to be cleared for us to be able to go through the closing process. Right.
Right.
So what happens is we start off with the offer to purchase. Whoever is the seller, they'll sign it, and then from
Right.
there, what we'll do is we'll use a third party company. So we have a closing agent or a closing company that we use.
Yeah.
And what happens is we send that over to them, and then initially what will happen is you'll need a 10% down payment or for
Right.
us to be able to go under contract. And so then that closing company, they have an escrow account in the US, and so it makes it easy for people not to have to worry about exchange rates or
Right.
having to convert the money back into Belize dollars or Canadian US to Belize,
Yeah.
right? And so once that goes into escrow, we clear all the contingencies.
Right.
During that process, what happens is the closing agent, they'll get all of the documents set up.
Yeah.
And so here in Belize, you're not able to do any electronic
No.
documents,
Transfer,
as you
yeah.
said, right?
Yeah.
And so the actual transfer of documents must be inked or must be on
Yes.
paper with an ink. And so they'll ship the documents over to you, then they'll ship it over to the seller, and then it comes back into Belize. Once all of the paperwork is done and the title that is presented by the seller is clear, there's anything wrong with the title.
Right.
Then from there, that's when the rest of the transaction will go in. So you'll send the rest of the funds over to the escrow account,
Right.
and then that's when they do the switch. Now here in Belize, you don't get your title right away.
Yep.
No.
It takes a couple of times, and so when you're
Takes some
purchasing in
time.
Belize,
Yeah.
pack your patience too,
Yeah,
right?
It's true.
But what you do get is what we call an LRS number, which basically
Right.
means that it is registered under the lands department.
Yes.
And so any purchase you get, and that usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And so once you get that LRS number, you are legally the owner of it. It's registered within the lands department that you are the owner, and you're able to do whatever it is that you need to do with the property, whether it's a land or vacant land and build a home,
Right.
or if it's a condo, for example, and you want to rent it out, then that you're legally the owner. The actual paper, the actual title takes anywhere between 12 to 18 months.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going through. But so it's a little bit different because, like, back home, if you're buying a property, right, it's instant. Usually, well, not instant, but like a day later, you have your certificate and it's all on there. So things move a little bit slower here, but you do get that, like you said, that document that the closing lawyer gives you. One of the things that was maybe a little bit different that I wasn't accustomed to on my deal, I guess the closing lawyer was representing both myself and the seller in this particular case. Is that a common? And the second question I have with that is also, I've heard sometimes you have the real estate agent both representing both the seller and the buyer. And what are you guys' thought on someone buying? Like, should you have that set up? And I guess I'm more concerned about the double side when it comes to buying and selling. The lawyer one's a little bit different just because I think, well, they're just checking the document to make sure it serves you. So can either one of you speak to that?
Yeah, I would say for the closing agent, so just like you were saying, the closing agent is going to collect all the documents and they are going to be making sure that the title is in the name of the person who's selling, right? So they might come back, and I know that this happened with you, right? It was like in the name of somebody else, and not that it couldn't be sold, but you want the offer to purchase to be in the same name of the person who has on title. So I had to do some readjustments there, but it was all good, right? But that's something that the attorney, the closing agent, sees,
Yeah.
right? And so they just want to make sure that that all gets rectified. They're not going to allow you to close unless all of that is completed, or unless you're like, oh yeah, I feel comfortable to move forward with it.
Right.
So the closing agent is like you said, a document checker. They're making sure that all of the ducks are in a row, that everything looks good, and then that way you're able to move forward. With the real estate agent, I think it depends entirely on the agent. I think that there's really ethical agents out there, and I think there are other ones who are just trying to do anything for a sale.
Right.
And so, I've been in that situation before where I've represented both the buyer and the seller for the same property. And that's why I always recommend to get an inspection, right? Like I could tell you what I know about the property or based on what the seller told me, but the best thing you can do is get an inspection. And then talk to the real estate agent, like why is the person selling? Ask these sort of questions that you would ask anyway.
Right.
But I do think it depends entirely on the agent.
Now, when you said the inspection, you're talking about like if they buy like a condo.
Yes. Yep.
Now, we're familiar with what inspection like. So is this similar inspection in terms of like what we're accustomed to in North America, or is it more like a visuals to make sure like I found a big hole in the roof or something like that? Like how I guess
they're very
like,
similar.
How thorough is the inspection here compared to like say if you're thinking about North American standards?
Yeah,
Similar?
very, very similar. So there's two inspectors that we as a company use. Both of them are great. One of them, they both write up very detailed reports. We'll send you pictures, give suggestions, and then they'll come back. If you want them to reinspect, they'll come back. Like after you talk to the seller, they've decided, all right, these are the things that we're going to update or change.
Right.
Then they'll come back and reinspect to make sure that it's done.
Okay.
And then they'll provide you an update and a report on that. So it's quite similar, but like I was saying, we don't have like the lead test here, mold test, like they're not doing that. But they'll come and they'll check all the faucets, right? They'll turn the water on, they'll look at the appliances, make sure everything's functioning. They'll see if there's a nick in the tile on the floor, they'll put that on the report. Right? If a door is not swinging smoothly, they mention that on the report. They'll look at the health of the air conditioning units, they look at the wiring for the electricity, the electric boxes to make sure that's all color coded correctly.
Right.
So it is very thorough.
No, that's good too. And I guess the last to close up just this section is we were doing the deal. I was kind of getting nervous because we're getting close to like the timeline. And then I guess it is safe to say there's some fluidness or flexibility in terms of like the dates, kind of like because you were telling us like, oh, don't worry, like we have in the contract an extra 30 days. And I guess back home we're very used to like you gotta hit. And there's still that, but there seems to be a little bit more, I guess, exchange or understand like if we're getting funds over here, so things may be delayed. And the reason I bring it up is I was transferring money and essentially my bank told me it took me longer to get the money in time, right? So I was freaking out a little bit, but you told me, oh, don't worry, we have an extra 30 days in there in that clause. So is that kind of common where there's always this anticipation like things may not go according to plan?
Oh yeah.
So we build an extra day in there, or just renegotiating the date if you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we like to do as a standard is give an additional 30 days should in case there's something that, for example, goes wrong.
Right.
One of the things that we were facing issues was getting a
surveyor,
to go and survey the land.
That's right.
There's not many surveyors here on the island, and so to get one to come out really takes some time for him to be able to make some time out of, if it's his main job, to get out of his main job and do the survey and do that. And so also, for example, with banks, just like you said, sometimes it takes a little bit longer for different banks to do an international wire. There's a little bit more due diligence needed on the bank side, or maybe on the title side. There's something, a red tape on the title that needs to be sorted and takes a little bit longer. And so that's something we definitely like to do as a standard, just to give the extra time. Though we do want to hit it on the exact closing date. But we understand that there's certain things that doesn't go to plan and it needs a little bit more time for it to be resolved.
And what's for our deal, what's like a standard, I guess, closing time frame? Usually you got in most deals, like is it like a 2-week kind of thing, or it depends on each sale, or like?
We again try to keep it as a standard. Standard is really 2 months, but you are able to do it longer or shorter. For example, if you're skipping inspection, skipping surveys, which we do not recommend to do.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. You can definitely get it shorter days of 2 weeks or a month type of deal. The paperwork itself will take a little bit longer, like I said, just because it needs to be FedExed or shipped out to you, so that may take a while. But you are able to do it shorter or you are able to do it longer. But typically as a standard, what we like to do is have a 2 months period, because that's what we feel really allows enough time for everything to be done within that period.
Yeah. And that's also important too, because I think one of the things I imagine if I'm selling the property, I also don't want that property to just be hold on indefinitely, right? I don't want someone like, oh yeah, I'll buy the property, but I need 6 months. It's like,
Right.
well, I could be selling to other people
Yep.
at that same time.
Yep.
So again, kind of goes to the earlier conversation we're saying, which is this is a cash-based, market. So you need to make sure that you have kind of like everything in a row before you make that initial offer. I would say like when you look at a price point, once you figure that out, I wouldn't say don't pick a price point that you certainly don't have the resources for. Try to negotiate a price point that you can move on it.
Right.
Just to keep things kind of more honest. So again, the sellers and stuff, just you're not really serious. Because I don't think that's gonna look good on the person working with you. Like, okay, you're not really that serious. So the next property, they might not be as enthused to make that offer with you here. But yeah, good tip though.
Well, then I will mention too, if it is the buyer that's dragging their feet on stuff,
Yeah.
right, then they're typically the seller's not as willing to extend that the closing date or the deadline,
Yeah.
right? And I've heard this from some of my other real estate friends who were telling me that the buyers were just, all right, we're gonna get there, Oh, we'll send the documents. Oh, and just kind of dragging their feet all over. And so then finally the seller, they were past closing, 30 days past closing, and they were going into another 30 days. And finally the buyer's like, or seller was like, you know what? That's fine. We've waited, even though we've waited 3 months, I'm gonna put it back on the market and we're gonna find a new buyer. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess we're not lawyers, obviously. I'm not.
Nope.
I think it's important with the survey, like Gina was saying, you don't want to skip that because that's your opportunity to actually get like what we call in Canada, it's like when you go to your lawyer, you get your title reviews. Essentially what that is, you're getting the title to make sure, like in my particular case, to make sure the seller that was selling me the property is the one who's on title. And then you want to check for, just anything else that, maybe the lawyer sees that's an issue. And I would say, ask questions if you're not familiar. Just get them to run them. Is there anything? And in my particular case, they told me if there was an issue with it. Right? You actually get something that tells you the title. So, really important step if you're buying like just a land, just to make sure you get that additional. Again, it's not gonna be your real estate agent, but it's someone third party now going. This is what we see on title. So please don't skip that step. And again, with the inspection, I would imagine you said probably don't skip that too.
Agreed.
If you you already spend the money, so what's an extra?
A few $100, just do it.
Find the other place. But no, thanks for the tip. Those are really good information. All right, so Rachel and Gina, thank you so much for all the information you've given us. For those of you who are interested in buying property in Belize, I just wanted to give you guys something to meet Rachel and Gina because, again, I've worked with them. They're real. If you have any other questions, I would suggest maybe find some that we didn't answer in this podcast. Reach out to the team. Now, Rachel and yourself, where's the best place if someone has additional questions, reach out to you guys?
I would say info@lunarealtybelize.com. So we'll do an email for this first one, right? info@lunarealtybelize.com. And then put in the subject line, put Brighton's name, put Brighton, right? So that we know that you listened to this session here. And then we also have a handful of complimentary resources. Like we said before, educated buyers are the best buyers. And it gives you also the most peace of mind when you have an idea of what you're stepping into. And so we have a buyer's resource guide that we're very, very happy to send you. It has in there questions that you should be asking, what you need to know about the real estate market at this point. And from there, we'll get you the details and then just answer any other questions that you have on your mind, because there's probably a bunch that are stewing up at this point, or maybe you have no idea what to ask. We'll send you the resource guide. That'll give you a good idea of what's going on here, but that would be the best, I would say.
So that's it for the interview. I hope you guys found this helpful. And again, special thank you to Rachel and Gina for coming on here and sharing that information. Again, I will pull Rachel's details in this video link. So if you're interested in connecting with her, you'll see the link in the video description. Also, if you want to learn more about Rachel's personal story, she came on my podcast. I will put that link for her podcast episode in this video as well, so you can learn more about her. She's got a super cool story. And like I said, if you want to work with her and her team, I can vouch and say like they're fantastic. Gina is fantastic, and Rachel is also fantastic as well to deal with. So they're a good group of people to deal with when it comes to buying property in Belize. But that's all I've got for you guys today. If you have any other questions or you have questions about Belize or buying stuff, put in the comment section and then I will answer those questions as well. But otherwise, I will catch you guys on the next video. Oh, since it's been released in December, hope you guys all have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in advance. I'll talk to you guys in the new year. Take care.